Howdy my homies, James Finnerty here with the Rewind Electric. And I'm doing another unplanned impromptu on the iPhone video because I got this little package in today. Doing another opening the mail video here. And though I wasn't planning on doing any videos today, my man Justin Stabler sent me this package on behalf of Mr. Trey Anastasio. And as I understand it, it is a vintage 60s Accutronics reverb tank. And the reverb repair and restoration videos that I've done in the past, I'm accidentally starting this computer up here. I'm watching a little bit of Mark Hopkins and Kip Elder of Star Guitars, both friends of mine. Mark being a good friend, Kip being a new acquaintance, and happy to know him. Back to the point, the reverb videos that I've done have gone over well, so I wanted to just fire the camera up here and we'll do a little live test of this. I don't know that I'm going to do the actual repair on the video, but I might. We'll just see what's involved. But for sure, this is a 3 desert beverage video, so I've got myself some iced filtered water from a filtration system that I've made myself. And you know what they say about guys who live in the desert and build their own water filters. Well, I don't know, but I'm sure they say a lot of things. And my friend Perrier. And good old Mr. Iced Coffee. Fresh brewed this afternoon by Mrs. Rewind. So, setting those aside, let's crack this guy open. The instruction I got with this was kind of brief, but that's okay because there's really nothing wrong with it that I can't fix, because I happen to keep a supply of vintage tanks and vintage tank parts on hand, because I've learned through experience. I've learned through experience that shuffling plastic and bubble wrap on camera sounds terrible once you compress the audio. But I've also learned through experience that the new tanks sound awful. This is not as vintage as I expected. Okay. All right, I can see already immediately what's wrong with it, but we're going to check everything to be thorough and not just assume one thing. So, if you will, let's see if I can zoom in. Okay, so if you see this clip that's connected here, I already see another problem. Okay, so this clip connected to the inductor is an indicator that this is a more modern tank. These were not used on the originals. Those leads, they may be plastic leads, but they were soldered directly to the inductor. As I was showing you that, I noticed this. So there's a broken wire here. Another clip on this side. This is loose, which is not uncommon. That is just a sad reality with the modern tanks. And then we have this. This is not a spring that just needs to be reattached. I wish I could see the camera screen a little bit better while I'm showing you this to make sure it's focused, but let's see. What this black piece is right here, maybe I'll just hold it down away from the camera to be sure it's focused. This is a magnet. This magnet that's attached to the end of the spring, this little black piece is a magnet, and it should have a fine wire extending from the end of it there, and that wire passes through this hole. It's hard to get it angled in there, but okay, see, there's a hole right there. Through that hole, which is this tube, this brass tube, and then it terminates on the end, held in place by this weld. Well, it's really just a blob of solder. And that magnet, when the spring does this, Well, let's see. This is actually the input side. So what that magnet does when electricity stimulates this coil, and you can think of this as a speaker. It's essentially what it is. It's about a 1 or 2 ohm speaker driven from a tube speaker output transformer, just as the main speaker in the amp. It's basically the same thing, only it's a 12 AT7 driving it rather than a couple 6L6s or what have you. That signal comes into this jack, hits this coil, which may as well be the speaker coil, and then there are some laminated steel plates that you see in a U shape right here, and they pass around both of these springs on either side, and they carry the magnetic charge, the magnetic field generated by this coil, the magnetic energy. It is transferred down to this area by these laminated steel plates in a U shape. And so these 2 little magnets at this spring has one too, 2 little magnets at the end of these springs sit between them, are oscillated by that moving electrical field, because you've got an electromagnetic field oscillating and a magnet sitting in it, and the magnet vibrates accordingly, sympathetically with the oscillations of the field. Then those vibrations travel down this spring, and basically the exact same thing in reverse happens here. So now you've got a magnet oscillating inside a magnetic field, and it is picked up by this transducer and flows back out through here. So this is kind of like it's not entirely different from a guitar pickup, how it picks up the strings. Only the magnet is inside the coil rather than the strings being magnetized by a magnet in the pickup. All right, so, and then that passes back into here and it goes into the amp, and it's essentially just fed back into the signal path, the audio signal path of the amp, and amplified again. It may as well just be like an effects return or a line input on the amp. You could think of it as that. So that's Reverb Tank 101, and we found 2 problems already. I'm gonna fire up ye old multimeter here up on my bench and just take a couple readings off these inductors. This one we're gonna have to read right off the inductor itself because this wire is broken off, so I'm going to attempt to carefully remove, there we go, this, and we'll have to reattach that, which is just like it's like a punch fit. If you remember telephone terminal blocks that you'd have maybe in the basement of your home, or certainly in an office building, where you just like place these wires in between a couple barbs and they slide in and cut the insulation and make electrical contact, that's exactly what this is. It's a pretty poor connection, but they're made to be done fast and dirty. Now, my recommendation to Justin when we first discussed this yesterday was to find himself some vintage Gibbs tanks from the 1960s. Those are my preference. I shouldn't have said that. Leave them alone. They're terrible. I'd like to have them all. Don't buy those. They're no, they're really great. Most of my vintage Fenders came with Gibbs, not Accutronics. At least one came with an Accutronics. And in a comparison recording I did of, I don't know, at least a dozen of them, I favored the Gibbs almost every time, from different eras all through the 60s and 70s. Now that's all personal preference. Okay, I'm getting 1.9 ohms or so here. Remember I told you this was a 1 or 2 ohm speaker coil? That's exactly right. So that's just fine. This one I expect to see about 200, because this is driving, it's picking up the signal and sending it back into the amp, not receiving a high level voltage signal. Okay, yeah, 215 ohms. So both of those transducers are likely just fine. The problem is going to be this, and reattaching it, and also this plug here. I think I'm going to do away with these plugs because Trey is a professional who is on the road nearly every day of the year, playing big shows on big stages with high stage volume. And that gear gets moved around. I think they tour with 19 semi-trucks worth of gear. This gets used as hard as anyone in this world is going to use it. It is serving its intended purpose. And this little plug, fine for Junior in his bedroom, fine for a band doing the the club circuit and whatnot. If it dies, you can pick up a replacement. But for the type of work that Trey's doing, I can, and so I will make these connections more robust by doing away with those plugs. What I'm going to also need to do, the way I would repair this on a vintage tank, is either to drill out that brass rivet and replace this entire transductor section, or I have successfully heated these brass tubes, removed them from the plastic, and reinserted another one robbed from a vintage tank. Ideally a tank with a broken transducer, so that I'm not, that's why I keep them around. I can do stuff like that. So I might do that. What I need to do first is just reach out to Justin and confirm all that. So, hang tight, guys. I'll be right back with you. All right, guys, I'm back here, and as you can see, I've got a bunch of parts. Just got off the bat phone, direct line to the man himself, and had a little talk. Justin knew that this was not a vintage tank. It was just a little bit of a misunderstanding over text. It is a made in the USA tank, and he told me that it was a made in the USA Accutronics. I just assumed it was a vintage tank, so that was the confusion there. As it turns out, I actually have the same tank. This came out of my Landry LS50, but I wasn't a fan. I ended up putting in a tank from a 65 Deluxe Reverb. So I have that. I could rob a part from it if needed, but I think I'm going to keep it intact in case Justin wants that one as an exact spare backup to this. One more thank you to our non-sponsor Perrier. I did get the okay to do away with these quick connects and make direct solder connections. Now, what I need to do, there's two ways to repair this. Pardon me if I already explained this, I don't remember. One way is I can heat this with a soldering iron and try to remove it. It's press fit into the plastic, and they have some ridges or some barbs depending. So they weren't made to come out, but I've done it before and put a new one in. That keeps this entire transducer assembly original. So in my mind, that is the ideal repair. And I'm just going to treat this as if it is a vintage tank, because it is unobtainable now. However, should that fail, I am able to drill out this rivet and replace this entire transducer assembly with the vintage one. And I have to measure them. Some of these are inputs, some of these are outputs. They're not interchangeable. But I do have a handful of them here, as you can see. So I probably have the right one somewhere. So what I'm going to do is just move these aside, get these extra tanks out of my way, and flip this over to protect it. Let's see, find an appropriate, yep, there's an appropriate, insanely huge size tip for the soldering iron. I'm going to set that to run fairly hot. These things are awesome. It's already at 400 degrees. They heat up instantly. Seconds. However, this is like the Asian knockoff of the JBC, because it's really hard to get parts for JBC. They make awesome stuff, but good luck getting it. That's the problem. Okay. I might need to take this whole thing out. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Let's try. It's like extracting a tooth. There it goes. There we go. So you can see that it has, yeah, I'm going to burn my finger trying to show you. Let's do a little zoom in. All right. See, there's this plastic ridge here. This one actually has a little notch in it, and it's molded into the plastic. This is brass, and it's molded into that plastic housing right here. See, this is where it was. It was sitting right there next to the other, and so they're not made to come out like that. And you can see there's a little bit of a mess there to deal with now. However, is this cool enough to pick up now? Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do this. Now, if you can see here, let me find my finer pliers. There is this piece of wire right here. See that that's hanging from? And that was once passing through that black magnet piece, and that had a hook on the other end and then connects to the spring. So I have before heated this solder, removed that, done it that way. That's another way you could do it. I'm not going to say one way is right or wronger than the other. Either one would work, but the reason I chose to do it that way is because I didn't want to. This is still intact. Is this the one I'm using? No. Where'd my donor go? Maybe that is it. Oh, right here. This one still has that piece intact. Is that on the camera? So I want to take it all out as one original factory assembly and try to replace it that way. Could you do it the other way? Absolutely. Would the other way actually be one less part being swapped, one more part original? Yeah, it would. But this way keeps that assembly and that factory solder connection original. And I've chosen to prefer that in this case. But I wouldn't argue with somebody else saying that the other option is better. Both are valid. Okay, there we go. Look, now we can see it. Let's do a little zoom in again. Okay, so this is a flare out. It's very minor. I can see it in person, but rather than having that ridge in it, this one's flared out on the end, which might mean that I can pass it through in this direction more successfully. This little black donut thing here, or little, it looks like a bead. That's what it is, a black bead. That is the magnet, and it oscillates inside those laminated steel plates and creates the energy which is transferred back into the amp to be amplified as sound after the sound passes through the springs and makes the reverb effect. And then there is here, yeah, you can see it there. There is a little eyelet, like it's bent like a hook where that spring hooks in. So there's that piece. Okay, this is just donor parts. Let's zoom back out. And now the task is going to be to put this back into the new tank. It's a little piece of glue on here I want to try to clean off. I need my magnifiers. Yeah, there is just a little bit of dried glue. There we go. Okay. Let's see if this will cooperate. There is an alignment. You want the eyelets to, the wire needs to pass through this way, not this way. When I say the wire, I mean the hook at the end of the spring. And oh, you can see what I did there. Sorry, I was drifting off the camera. So, I just took a little 3/8 inch wooden spacer that I have, slipped it under and stood it up. Keep this platform stable. Okay, that's what I should have done to begin with, huh? So this doesn't need to go in very far at all. In fact, it just barely needs to press in just slightly. Just slightly. Because you don't want this part with the magnet on it to, you want that to sit between the sensors, not pass through them. So, okay, we're gonna heat it up. I'm going to use a larger pair of pliers for this part. And they will both act as a heat sink, preventing this solder blob from melting and just give me a little more leverage to work with. But I'm going to hold them this way. Van Halen fans out there, something awesome happened in the last couple of days. So there are now on the internet, you can find 74 previously unheard recordings from 1977. These are professional. There's like two sets. They're split into two sets. One is outtakes. So there's some tracks where there were like, they were maybe like out of tune a bit, or it just wasn't the preferred track that made it to the album. And others are just like alternate songs and versions and soloed guitar tracks and instrumental versions, and like stuff is so cool. So 74 tracks after 46 years. This stuff had been locked down for 46 years. Van Halen fans will know it's been very frustrating to have this stuff kept locked away. Like, we knew that this existed, but it was just kept locked away for 46 years. And then 3 or 4 days ago, it was leaked. This is not an official release. This is like Ted Templeman's work. Not the leak, but I mean, like his recording. Or Don Landy, you could say. So I don't know what the deal is, where it came from, what the story is. Somebody told me it was Peter Kehoe that mixed this stuff down for Warner Brothers, and then they weren't able to release it because of, I don't know, whatever, like something with like disagreements with the band and the family, like they couldn't come to terms, so it just like got squashed. I am going to address this in a slightly different way. A way I should have done it earlier. what I'm seeing now is necessary. I'm going to try and clean that hole out a bit. Let's start with this. You guys see what I'm doing? I'm just using a drill bit by hand. I don't know that I have a reamer that small. That would be ideal. Maybe I do. I'll look in a minute. So I'm taking a drill bit by hand and just running it backwards. Just trying to clear out some of that. So what happened was when I pulled the original one out, the heat melted the plastic a little bit. There we go. And kind of made a mess of it so that this new piece won't slip in quite so easily. Okay, now I want to ream it because I want to put a bit of a concave shape to it. So, oh, but will it fit? Yeah, it will, but I'm going to try to. I think I have a smaller one. I like to do this as clean as possible. I think this is it. Yep. Okay. That's the tool I'm going to use. What I'd like to do is just put a little bit of a chamfer on this to help guide that part in. Now remember, this whole tank is a throwaway piece, much less like this little part of it. This stuff was never made to be repaired like I'm doing. Okay, I need to check the alignment where that magnet is, and it is perfect there. Okay. And give it a little bit of heat. It's fairly firm in there already. The spring tension is going to pull it in the correct direction to make it seat better. And I'm going to give it a drop of adhesive too. Okay. Okay, that was a little too much. But you could see right when the heat just started to give on that plastic, it just became pliable. Medium. And let's do a little piece of chopstick here. Okay, there we go. Oh gosh, you guys are off camera. So you see what I did here? I just folded up this piece of paper towel right there, stuck it under so it's not touching. I'm gonna use that as a sponge to hold a little bit of this below, let the fumes rise up and accelerate the reaction. That cures the glue. This looks like it's probably a nylon, maybe a Delrin, probably nylon. If it were older bakelite, I would be concerned about a reaction with the super glue because that is a thing. It'll smoke up. Never had it ignite, but I've had bakelite dust definitely smoke up in a fairly violent way. Okay. Okay, while that is reacting, curing, I'm gonna remove my block. And, oh, we got to get the old magnet off of this. The magnet is still sitting on there. And it's on there fairly good. So, Huh. Oh, it was glued on. Okay, all right. I gotta save this magnet though, because man, if you need one of those, you're not gonna find one anywhere else other than right here. Turning the iron to a lower temperature. I'm just going to attempt to clean off this bit of glue that's on here. Oh, this is the kind of thing I should be wearing eye protection for. I think I've got it though. Okay. Okay, and oh, I thought I had it. All right. There we go. Now, I have to repair this before I can test it because it was not on properly to begin with. Okay. So, green wire is the hot and it goes to the lower terminal. I need my little wooden block back. I'm going to block this side up now. Do some work over here. Will that reach? It will if I unhook it. There's a little retention tab here. Bend that down. And then you got a little bit more room to play with. Okay. So, oh man, I don't know if you guys saw that. I keep pulling this off the camera here. Let's see if I can, well, all right, I'm just gonna try to remember to stay on this side. Put this stuff away, make some more room. Maybe encourage me to take up the table. Oh, hey, just poke myself. Somebody watching this is gonna be like, I'm not sending anything to that guy. Poking himself, jerking the parts around. Yeah. I won't deny your criticisms. Okay, we can all do a little better at everything, right? I'm not naturally good at doing things on camera. Or while being watched. I used to have a retail location on a like a cool little street in downtown area in Frederick, Maryland, right on if you're familiar with that area, my shop was right above the Starbucks on Market Street. So Market and Patrick. And it was cool, but to have, you know, people around visiting, but I've got a lot less work done. It took a lot longer to do anything. I probably didn't do my best work because somebody was standing over my shoulder watching. So there was really no, you know, that was my first couple of years doing this. And there was really no need for me to have a storefront kind of situation for what I do. So I haven't done it since. I can pre-bend this around this guy. Get a little bit of a spiral going. Okay. Oh, that's the wrong iron for the job. see. This will do better. So it's just a little smaller bent tip on that one. Let me give it a little more heat. Yeah, check out that Van Halen stuff if you're a fan. It is awesome. Some of the songs on that leak, some of the mixes are better than the original album, which is awesome. So I would say very, very much worth checking that out if you're a fan. I got to put my head in front of this for a minute. I can't see what I'm doing here. Okay. Okay, at this point, although this connection still needs to be replaced, the replacement of this connection over here is just for durability. Oh, I need to put a drop of glue on that too. I don't like that wobbling around, nor that one. This can come out now. That should be all done. Okay, let's fire up the Princeton Reverb over here and give this a test. What I need to do is hook these up. Okay, bringing the amp up to 120.5 volts today on the Variac. Enjoying a bit more Perrier. This Princeton that we're using for testing today is a 1978, so that is not an inappropriately high voltage. Sitting at 119.1 now as the heaters have come up and started drawing some current. Let's see. Do we have an input? That's just me tappy. Okay. Just gonna do a quick function test. Now let's dial the reverb up. Which one of these goes to the output of the tank? Well, do the same test here. Obviously that one. Dial the reverb back down. To the output, to the input. I already hear it springing. Now, yeah, you can hear that. Okay, all right, I'm pretty sure that's fine, but I'm gonna plug a guitar in real quick. Just to make sure it doesn't sound weird. Let's turn it up all the way. Yeah, sounds nice and sprungy, right? All right. I'm not gonna wank on the guitar all night for you guys. So, function test, yes. The surgery is a success. Yet still, turn the reverb down, turn the variac down, unplug the connections. Still, this quick connect style plug here needs to be replaced, and these need to be tucked back in. So remember I said there was a retention clip here? It's just that little bit right there. They pass behind that brass clip, and then that clip gets pressed in back in place. Okay, onto this. We're going to loosen the retention clip. Okay. And we're gonna press this one back down a little bit better than I did using the tool. Okay. There we go. And all right, so green wire on top as far as soldering to the transducer. Two schools of thought on this. I could glue, because remember this is a little loose, I wanted to glue it. I could glue that first and then solder, or I could solder first and then glue. I'm going to solder first and then glue. There's advantages to both. You glue first and then solder, you've got a more stable piece to work with. But if you solder first and then glue, like I'm about to do, you don't have to smell the glue burning. So I'm comfortable working on it unstable because I want to be comfortable not smelling the glue. All right. And where's my little wooden block? Here we go. Back in there with the wooden block. Flip it up on its side. There we go. Get a bit more clearance. We said green on top, which means the black one goes on the bottom. I'm gonna do my little trick about wrapping it around here again. Okay. Are we on camera still? Okay. Now, if you're going to say, why are you doing this? You could just replace it with a new tank. You can buy a mod tank for $19 from CE Distribution or Mojotone or whatever. Like, yes, you can. And there's good reason why I'm doing this anyway, and why the customer is paying for it. And that is because those tanks sound absolutely nothing like the old ones. If you haven't swapped one of those against an old tank, if you've only compared, like, you know, 3 modern tanks like Mod and Accutronics and whatever else is out there, Sunny Bear, like, against each other, okay, you might have a favorite among them, but start throwing some vintage Gibbs and Accutronics tanks into the mix, and yeah, sorry, they're in an entirely different class. I don't know why. Is it the springs? Is it the transducers? Is it the age of the springs? Is it the material of the springs? I think it's all of it, really. Oh, shoot. This is what happens when I start talking on camera. Okay. There we go. Give it one more little dab of fresh solder. Okay. And the green on top. Yeah, man, these old tanks, this isn't among my favorite. I like the 60s Gibbs tanks. I like the 60s and 70s Gibbs tanks. I like the 60s and 70s Accutronics tanks. But this made in the USA Accutronics from, like, I don't know, 90s or 2000s or whatever, still so much better than the current ones. And everybody knows it. There's no debate about it other than people who haven't actually compared them back to back in the same amp and just have their preferred brand. Well, I don't want to say that. I mean, maybe that's harsh because it is music and everything is subjective in music. But let's say that they sound undeniably different. I think that's fair. I'm going to try this again. And I'm going to run it around the other way. This way. Yeah, like that. That's better. And you're just kind of threading the needle. Getting that on there. Perfect. All right. The glue. Let's glue that guy on. Let's keep it raised up. I'm regretting throwing out that chopstick now. Oh, shoot. I know there's a better way to store this CA glue so the lids don't latch on each other. I go through the stuff so it ain't fast. I kind of don't care. But I should, you know, I know there's a method. You'd use a pin. Look at that. It's already hardened up. Okay. Now there is some heat generated by this stuff when you do this. Bit of a chemical reaction. So there is a chance that it can get too hot. Melt a piece of plastic or something. So I'm going to try and be very careful. Let me rephrase that. I'm going to try and be relatively careful. That's more accurate. Now, somebody's going to tell me the vintage ones are loose and it's supposed to be loose. The vintage ones are often loose. I won't argue that. It's supposed to be? I don't see why. Just another place to fail. This one was loose too, right? Well, yeah, a little bit. This guy over here needs a little dab too. Let's see. I'm trying to show this on camera while I do it. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get glue on stuff if I do that. So I'm going to just actually glue it. And if you can see it, you can see it. And if you can't, I'm sorry. You know what I'm doing. Should be obvious. I'm just getting some CA glue kind of at the end of that transducer where it meets the laminated steel plates. Just hold it in place. I got a little bit of a drip. I'm gonna clean that off. Okay. Okay. That's beautiful. All right. folded up shop towel. Get that drip out. A little bit too much glue on there. There's still a bit much, but Q-tips. Get that out. Different horses for different courses. You know, like paper towels, shop towels, Q-tips, sometimes cotton cloth. They all kind of pick up stuff in a different way from each other. Okay. Now, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to hit that with a little bit of kicker. It's not necessary if you can let this sit here overnight or whatever. But in the interest of moving on with the show, all right, Variac back up. Okay, gotta get this wooden block out of here. Tuck these little jumper leads to the transducer behind that retention tab. Press the tab back in with some kind of tool. I like these wires to be floating more than laying on stuff. Same with these. Okay, see now. Now we got rid of those quick connects. These things, those are not roadworthy. And we firmed up the transducers, so they're not going anywhere. We replaced the magnet and this terminating pin assembly on the back. And we're going to hook it back up to the amp and give it a final test. I'm sorry that I'm not appropriately testing this with a Languedoc into a train wreck. But would I like to? Ah-ha-ha. Nice and springy. Beautiful. Mission accomplished. Okay, so I really need two cameras. I mean, I have one, but I need to use them. So, what did we learn here? I'm out of my mind. I like to climb under cameras on my desk and work on old things that were meant to be thrown out. The operation was a success, though, and Trey gets to keep his original tank and the original sound, and I get to help out my friends. And at the end of the day, we've kept another piece of American musical instrument machinery, accessory, operating for another long period of time. So I'm going to play around with the other tanks a little bit here while they're out, but I'm not going to record that because it just makes things awkward to video everything. What could be awkward about this? So anyway, thank you, and feel free to reach out if you have a vintage reverb tank that you need repaired or restored or adjusted in some way. I can do it. Thank you. Have a good night.